Hello, hello, salut. I am the Rasta Witch. Here's where we learn the way of the Yan Sui Rasta, which is to say, my kind of Ital. Please subscribe and begin your own kind of Yan Sui witchcraft. All roads lead to Rome. Home. Okay, but seriously. Yeah, that's how I have fun, it's like, I know I'm not funny to anyone else, but you should see me. Man, do I think I'm funny. It is part of how I do it. Okay, so anyway. I always forget to turn my air conditioner off. Hang on a second. Okay, cool. Okay. Okay, this book is about the prophecy of the king of the north and the king of the south. Okay, so in the apocalypse, so a full third of the Bible is about prophecy concerning these days, the last days, the end of times, the great and dreadful day of the Lord. It's called many things. And that's nowadays. So I'll do another video of why the birthright of Joseph had to be postponed 2,500 years, and that would have to happen before the big day would happen, because that's important, because scholars right now are teaching that all these prophecies have failed, because it does. I mean, people even before Jesus said, this was going to happen. Tomorrow there's going to be the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Humans have been saying that this event is going to happen soon for like thousands of years. It's kind of ridiculous. I can see why people want to roll their eyes about it. Just so many failed prophets, including Herbert Armstrong in some people's eyes. But the problem with that one is, he said something would happen in 1975, and of course, that's when Selassie disappeared from history. And Herbert Armstrong didn't know, as the Elijah, who he was preparing the way for until after that. He wrote an article about it, and I've gone into that in other videos. This video would be way too long if I tried to include that as part of the message. Right now, we're done talking about Herbert Armstrong in previous videos. And that he's the Elijah and blah, blah, blah. But I bring it up because this book is about one of his books. Again, you can read all of Herbert Armstrong's books free on Herbert Armstrong Searchable Library. You can. I've downloaded them and given myself hard copies. I have a whole collection of hard copies, and some of the books I've just read online. I never made a hard copy of. This information is based on his book, The Middle Eastern Prophecy. One of the beauties of Herbert Armstrong is, though you and I alike would disagree with most of what he says, I don't know if most, but much of what Herbert Armstrong says I don't agree with, especially as some of his most fundamental points. But that's because Herbert Armstrong's is like, when we study the life of Jesus, we don't study the life of John the Baptist, who was the Elijah that prepared the way for Jesus. We study Jesus, and Jesus kind of does away with old things. Just like this is the same, it's not really, Yan Sui Rasta is not really about Herbert Armstrong, but we are inspired by Herbert Armstrong because, we don't believe in throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's the current, like, the beautiful thing about these days is the younger generation, and there's strong evidence of. I just realized I have a fat roll sticking out. But one of the proofs that the younger generation is a chosen generation to do great things is, if you listen to my generation and older generations, we call the younger generation just such a horrible generation. which is just like the apocalypse. For thousands of years we've been saying this is going to happen, and also for thousands of years we've called the younger generation the most wicked generation ever. Both of these things are things humans have always been doing, but the younger generation is, because it's a day of information, is significantly more educated than any other generation in human history, and and through that education, has by majority put away problems that have been plaguing humans, like war and why we should all hate each other. All of our church leaders and political leaders have been teaching this since forever, in the name of God, that we should love ourselves, elevate ourselves, and murder, rape, and pillage everyone that disagrees. So it's like, gosh dang, we quit doing that. The whole point of the apocalypse is that we live in peace. So that we're not waiting for, and I have videos, if you listen to my videos about in my Bible discussion playlist about cannabis in the Bible, you'll learn that you shouldn't look for Jesus floating in the sky. For one thing, the second advent and coming in, and Yahweh and the character of his kingship wouldn't have to have a new name. So Jesus isn't a new name, it's the same name. So it can't be Jesus. And for another thing, it needs to come in the clouds of incense. So I have a video on that about cannabis in the Bible. I shouldn't go into that. The rapture is bullcrap. The Bible historians will tell you all about how the rapture is not biblical, and of course they won't tell you anything about what I just said about the Lord coming in a cloud of incense. Most of that's the reason why I minister. Minister means under. It means that I'm under these people. I'm not elevating myself as this great prophet. Rather, I'm just unifying the things that all these great men, the Bible historians, the prophets, I'm a unifier. And so that's why, I'm not saying that I'm anyone great. I'm saying that I'm a minister. I'm even a legal minister. I can marry people and perform funerals and stuff, but so could anybody else. It's something anyone could be if that's what you thought was fun to do. But minister is the best word. I'm a Yansway Rostowich minister, meaning I'm under all these great people and all these great teachers for the purpose of unifying and teaching. And I'm a hippie. In fact, that's my street name, hippie, because that's exactly what I am. I'm just a gosh damn hippie. I'm all about peace, and I'm very, very talented at seeing the beauty in everybody and everybody's culture, and that's what I mean to do. I'm here to teach people why war is a dumb idea and why we should all love each other. Which is what the word minister means. So if you need to see me I don't know why it matters anyway. Just let the things I say stand for itself. Can anybody else use the Bible the way I do and still be in sync with what we know from Bible historians? I'm not like Bart Ehrman. I can't think of anything. The only thing I can think of that I disagree with Bart Ehrman is he says that all these prophets are failed prophets, which isn't true. Because of Haile Selassie, they're not fulfilled. But he would agree that we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So that's the mistake the younger generation is making. They want to throw the baby. They want to say, hey, we know God's not a man in the sky and was never supposed to be a man in the sky. That was something politicians forced upon the interpretation so that they could make a book out to be his word, and they manipulated that to say what they needed it to say so they could say it's God saying those things, so everybody would have to do it. There's no book is the most fundamental beliefs of the Yansway Rost is no book is the word of God, and there's no man in the sky living on a planet nearest the star Kolob or any of these mumbo jumbos that can be so easily proven false nowadays with the things that we know. And and evolution is a fact. The flood of Noah never happened. The Bible stories are mostly fables and myths mingled together, by Jeremiah mostly and Ezra and some priests who are under the direction of the king of Judah, who owns these workings done by the priests, called the Bible. So a third of this book is prophecy, and if it's a bunch of fables, why should we care about a bunch of failed prophecies from things that can be proven to be fables? Because of word forms, when you believe, like, these are things that we've believed in past lives. These are things that have been believed by everybody's past lives, all of us in our past lives. It's all crystallized, and there's all these word forms and all these things that have happened. It's in our languages and calendars and just in our minds, and it's in our souls, and just thinking that in one generation we can just cut all these strings like that is it's like thinking we can cut the string that connects our soul to our body, which you can. That's death, but maybe that's what God means by being born again in a more modern sense. You got to cut those ties, but then be born again, and have roots. These things are our roots that hold up a tree, and the tree is you. We're all gods and goddesses. So prophecy is, in the Kabbalah we learn about number 9, Yesod, the moon, the color purple, the most taboo subject. And these prophets just astral traveled into our day, and a lot of these prophecies I could do. Should I do that? Should I do a video where I will prophesize the future? Would you guys like to see me do that? And we can see how right I can be. Like, prophesizing is something anyone can do. It's always so obvious. Like, in the last days, we would, half of maybe 70% of prophecy is all stuff any educated, because people didn't know how to read. You have to realize the majority of humans were pretty stupid, but some of the people knew how to read, and they were over the people, and they had a perspective that was pretty, they elevated themselves, but reality elevated them too. They were on a different level, and it would have been easy to see where things are going, because they'd say things and God saith it, and everybody believes them, and they're like, boy, one day they're going to figure that one out. So it's not prophecy. It's not exact. They're just people saying things. If it says, and then a man with a long nose, maybe it won't be a man with a long nose. Maybe it'll be a group of men with their nose cut off. It's just, it's not, if you look at it that way, these prophecies are just that. Herbert Armstrong's wrong about a lot of the things. So what I think is, the Jan Sway Rasta believes that, the Rastowich believes that, that's me, that I'm a Deadhead. Have you ever heard the song Ripple by the Grateful Dead? And they've had children sing it in a choir. That song is the Grateful Dead altogether, or I take very seriously. I freaking love the Grateful Dead. They've taught me a lot. They've changed my life. They're beautiful, but mostly their song Ripple and Truckin'. Truckin's my comfort. Ripple is the philosophy. Peace peace starts with you. You have to understand how everybody should be loved, and how all these things can, how to unite the people so that we can outgrow war and learn how to have, like a Selassie talks about, That's why Selassie is important. The proof that these things are true isn't that scripture proves it true. It isn't that archaeology, it's not that science or anything can prove it true. And as you learn from these things, you need to adapt so that it's never in conflict with things that are facts, So if you have everything in sync with facts, and you believe in world peace, and there's all these, things connected to you from past lives that you've believed, and everything that happens, the only way peace can begin is for you to be able to understand how that's possible in your mind, and then it ripples out. You know, it's a rippling effect. So what you need to do is through Herbert Armstrong, you can learn how to, you know, let your heart fall in love with, learn how to love Herbert Armstrong. That's probably the first step. And when you learn to love Herbert Armstrong, you know, smoke a bunch of weed, and there's a message in cannabis, you know. Maybe even do a little bit of shrooms one day or something, you know. Learn the message of the natural sacraments, about how things are a bunch of bullshit, pretty much. That's what it taught me. It says, hey, look, all these people are full of shit, yo. And it's like, what? Don't say that. That's so horrible. I freaked out. No, everything has been a bunch of bullshit, you know. And then I calmed down and started needing answers. Herbert Armstrong can give you answers where you can learn that the people that are using the Bible to murder, rape, and pillage are the bad guys in their own book, you know. And when you realize that the whole point of it all is that it's the end of the story, so we don't need it anymore and we can move past it, that's when you love Herbert Armstrong. But then if that's true, all the fingers, you can imagine the story ends, and then sticking out of the end of the story are a bunch of hands and fingers going like this, over there, and there's a big giant picture of Haile Selassie and all these people smoking cannabis going, thanks and praises Jah Rastafari, blowing smoke all over them and all over this giant picture of Selassie, playing the drums, and, you know, a new name Jah Jah got, and a moment, even like Jah name, and it's a new name Jah God's got, terrible the moment, even like Jah name. For when they call him Rastafari, in gotcha we can tremble. Even, you know, smoking the herb, singing that song and everything. You know, that's the second coming, you know. And the second coming is, after a while, you're like, oh, the party's over. Everybody's done drumming. You're not stoned anymore. You're like, oh, why was everything pointed at Haile Selassie? So then you read the autobiography, and you start to fall in love with Haile Selassie, and you say, wow, Selassie believed incredible things way back in, you know, the 1930s and the 1940s, 50s, 60s. Like Selassie, everything we call a good idea today, Selassie established a lot. He was way ahead of his time. All the things that the youth think is so incredible are all things that Selassie thought was incredible long ago. But yet he still loved Jesus and Mary and the Bible, even though he knew organized religion was an out-of-date concept. I mean, he had it all, you know. But it's not that, because that's, none of those things matter. What matters is beginning the peace in your mind so it can ripple out. And Selassie is the perfect example, because he teaches you know, when Ethiopia had problems, he went before the UN. He didn't strike down lightning and, as God of the earth, I'll strike down all the fascists that are taking over my country, you know, Mussolini's armies, and blah blah blah. He didn't condemn or do anything. He just went before the League of Nations and said, hey, history will tell. That's what you guys are supposed to stop this. And then they didn't do it. It was the League of Nations. And then out of the ashes of that grew the UN, and he spoke before them and said, hey, you guys better, you know, the League of Nations fell apart because they didn't even do what they're supposed to do, you know. And he said left the same message with the UN as the first head of state to give a speech like that out of the ashes of the League of Nations. And whether it's the UN or not, it's that concept, a higher loyalty to world citizenship, a secondary loyalty to your national citizenship, and a third loyalty to your ethnic group, and then a lower loyalty to that, maybe to just your immediate family, and then a little lower to that to just your relationship with your partner or whatever, you know. And and just all that goes along with that, you know. That's the most important message of Selassie is that, just the story of the Italians taking, you know, just the war and all the stupid things that they burnt down churches, you know. That's not, you know, that's what the youth wants to do today, burn down the churches, so to speak, you know, by throwing the baby out with the bathwater. No, come on. read the story of Selassie. Why do all the fingers point at Selassie? So that's why this book's important. The King of the North, King of the South. The Apocalypse, the most famous prophecy of all these prophecies, the third of the Bible, is a spin-off of a prophecy that was given to Daniel in the Old Testament. You know, the beast and all these things is just kind of like a spin-off of a prophecy that happened in the Old Testament in the book of Daniel. And the 11th chapter of Daniel, and then even in the 10th chapter, it goes over that, you know. The first verse, it says, I'm reading right out of Herbert Armstrong's book, the first verse of the 11th chapter is a continuation from the last verse of the 10th chapter. The angel says to Daniel, the angel Gabriel appears before Daniel and says, behold, there shall stand up 3 kings and blah, blah. So you'll have to read the book yourself. That's why I didn't go into a lot of detail. But what he goes into, like this is, let me read one paragraph. Thus was the prophecy of verse 4 fulfilled to the letter, you know, who the 4 kings would be. Now, notice what follows. From here, the prophecy foretells the activities of only 2 of these 4 divisions. Egypt, called the king of the south, because it is south of Jerusalem, and the Syrian kingdom, the king of the north, just north of Judea. It is because the Holy Land passed back and forth between these 2 divisions, and because of their different wars were principally over possession of Judea, that the prophecy is concerned with them here in verse 5. Of course, I'll leave a link in because this video is getting too long, about details about that, the northern kingdom, the southern kingdom, about Hagar and Isaac. And the Bible people come from Isaac, and the Arabic people come from Hagar, and you know, both from Abraham and all that stuff. So to cut the story short, the king of the north is the Pope and Mussolini and everything I was just talking about. That's because the Catholic Church and the Roman Empire took over the land and blah, 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 and he goes over to that. The king of the south is the king of Egypt. And then by the end of the book, he makes it clear that Egypt, you know, used to be Upper and Lower Egypt, was Egypt in the north, and of course the Nile runs north. So the Upper Egypt is Ethiopia, and Lower Egypt is Egypt, and it was all one country, you know. Here are my notes, and so that's Haile Selassie. Haile Selassie is the king of the south, and it all builds up into this everything I've been saying so far. And here's my notes. That's not in the book. According to the Bible, Genesis 10, the ancient Egyptians were descended from Ham through the line of Mizraim. Ham had 4 sons: Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. The name Mizraim, is a Hebrew and Aramaic word, is the original name given for Egypt in the Hebrew Old Testament. Today we know the name Kemet is older, meaning black people. Scholars think Mizraim is the dual form, the plural form of the word Misr, M-I-S-R, meaning land, translated by ancient Egyptians as Ta-wi, meaning 2 lands, by earlier pharaohs at Thebes. In Hebrew, and that's in 2 lands. Mizraim is in Hebrew is Matzor, M-A-T-Z-O-R, the plural for mound or fortress. It's Upper and Lower Egypt. So Egypt doesn't really fit the description after a while. And Egypt ruled Ethiopia a number of times, and Haile Selassie broke that chain. The Coptic Christians, priests, they always had to ordain the priests forever in Ethiopia, but Haile Selassie ended that and made a new translation from Ge'ez to Amharic, and kind of cut those ties and made Ethiopia more independent of that, and becomes the king of the south. So that's and the whole point of all this is everything I've been saying. Why is there the oldest wars on the planet are these wars that this is referenced? They're older than Haile Selassie. The battles in Ethiopia are the longest continually fought wars in all human history, and it's connected to why the Middle East has just in such turmoil and such wars and everything like that. And part of how the peace can begin is to realize where these wars come from, from Abraham's sons, and who gets to have the birthright, and then the birthright ends up going to a descendant of Isaac named Joseph, and the tribe of Joseph, and how Bob Marley represents Joseph in modern day, and Haile Selassie is the king of the South, and learning how all these things happen allows you to just say, forget the Bible. Instead of reading the Bible, I'm going to get stoned and listen to Bob Marley Uprising full album on YouTube. And really think about life and try to let the peace begin in me so it can ripple out.